Leia here, back with a new diagnosis discussion video. So I do look at my analytics, and I noticed on my analytics that a lot of you guys are interested in my diabetes content. So while I have been promising a diagnosis discussion series on miserable malalignment syndrome, I'm going to push that back to my next diagnosis discussion series, and instead I'm going to make this video, which is about type 2 diabetes. Now, before I talk about type 2 diabetes, I need to talk about what diabetes is. Diabetes is a condition in which your body cannot properly use the sugar in your blood, called glucose, to be able to run all of your cells. So mitochondria are the powerhouse of your cell, but think about glucose as being the gasoline of your cell. And the way this works is that your body produces a hormone called insulin. And insulin goes and it binds with the glucose and it takes it into your cells where it can be used. If this does not happen, the glucose levels in your blood build up, and essentially diabetes is when your body can't do this process of transporting glucose into the cells correctly. There are two types of diabetes, type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. This video is about type 2 diabetes. I'm thinking about making an entire series of videos called adjacent diagnoses, so talking about diagnoses that I don't have but are similar to my conditions, and I might make an entire video about type 1 diabetes, and especially LADA, which is latent autoimmune diabetes in adults. There we go. Because even though type 1 diabetes is usually called juvenile diabetes, there actually is a type of diabetes that can happen when you are an adult, but it's still the autoimmune diabetes. So what's the difference then between type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes? And that answer is actually the mechanism as to why it is that you have diabetes. So adults with type 1 diabetes don't correctly produce insulin. Either they don't produce enough or they don't produce any at all. This means that the main form of treatment for type 1 diabetes is insulin. However, adults with type 2 diabetes like myself do produce insulin, either not enough or their cells aren't sensitive enough. Actually, cells not being sensitive enough has its own term, which is called insulin resistance. It can cause discoloration, as you can see on my neck, and a whole range of other symptoms. I've actually had insulin resistance for way before I had diabetes. I have had it since I was relatively young, and so it put me at a very high risk of developing diabetes. I realize that I've said the word insulin a bunch of times, but I haven't actually explained to you what insulin is. Insulin is a hormone that's produced by your pancreas. Like I said, in people with type 1 diabetes, they either don't make insulin or they don't make near enough, whereas people with type 2 diabetes make enough insulin, it's just that their body can't use it correctly. Now, I'm a lover of HouseMD, which means I love medical metaphors, and to try to really grasp the concept of the difference between type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes, I'm going to use the metaphor of a newspaper because, of course, I always use newspaper for my medical metaphors. That's just who I am. So, imagine the glucose are stories. So you have all of these stories all over the place, and the insulin are the journalists. Now, with people with type 1 diabetes, they don't have any journalists on staff. So instead they have to hire stringers, which come in and do the stories. But each freelance stringer only does one story, so they continuously have to hire more stringers, more freelancers. Meanwhile, if you think about type 2 diabetes, they have journalists, but the journalists are severely underfunded and understaffed. So instead of hiring more journalists, the easier thing to do is to actually fund those journalists and give them what they need to be successful. If that still isn't enough, then the other option is to hire some freelancers to help take the burden off of the existing journalists. Now, just like blood sugar, you don't want too many story ideas, and you don't want too few story ideas. If you have too many story ideas, then you don't have anything to put in the paper because they're all ideas and no one's writing them. And if you have too few, then that means your journalists are sitting around with nothing to do. So instead with diabetes, what we want is we want a nice even level. And how we get that nice even level is different in type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. In type 1 diabetes, the even level is given through insulin. It's a way of trying to keep the blood sugar stable by ensuring that there's enough hormone or enough journalists to deal with the glucose. However, for those with type 2 diabetes, The main way that we try to keep it level is to eat meals throughout the day. For me personally, I try to eat 5 to 6 meals, and due to my stomach condition, quite a few of those are liquid meals or soft meals, but eating multiple meals. There have been some studies to say that for type 1 diabetics or for diabetics that use mealtime insulin, this may not be the best idea just because it requires more mealtime insulin. But like I said, many type 2 diabetics like myself are not on mealtime insulin if they're on insulin at all. So now I want to talk about my diabetes personally. I will make a whole video on this if you want, but my diabetes story is somewhat traumatic. I went to the doctor to figure out what was wrong with my stomach, and they did a routine glucose test, and they told me to go to the emergency room because it was over 500. My highest one was a little bit under 600, and it took me more than a month to get my sugars down to where they were normal, and that was with taking 42 units of insulin. Yeah, it's quite a bit of insulin, and the maximum dose of metformin. For me, I find that when I am doing everything the way I'm supposed to, I have a lot of problems with lows, so I actually, right here, at my bedside table, always keep glucose tabs. So if I wake up in the middle of the night and I check my blood sugar and it's low, I can just open this up, take a few. Obviously I'm not going to take some now because I already ate. But I can use these, and then I will make myself something to eat. Also, whenever I'm going to be gone throughout the entire day, I do keep some of these. I actually put them in a medicine bottle and take them with me. And I also take with me nuts and seeds and some cereal, sometimes a cereal bar as well, just to make sure that if I need to eat something, I have something to eat. More recently, with my stomach problems, I'm also trying to make sure that I take 1 to 2 liquid supplements, so usually an Ensure and an Ensure Plus with me, so that if for any reason I need to consume something with carbs in it, I have it with me. I think for me the most difficult thing about diabetes is just that people don't really seem to treat it like a chronic illness in the way that you would treat POTS or gastroparesis or any other number of chronic illnesses. You know, for me, I check my blood sugar whenever I feel like it, but normally at least 4 or 5 times a day. And I'm very good at knowing, oh, I feel jittery, my blood sugar must be high, or oh, I feel spacey, I bet my blood sugar is low. But I noticed that a lot of people don't take these same precautions. You have people that don't change out their needles every single time. You have people that maybe go, you know, an entire day or even sometimes multiple days without testing their blood sugar, and that's really not safe. You know, it is a chronic illness. We need to treat it like any other chronic illnesses. Now, I personally don't have a CGM, a Dexcom, or a Libre Freestyle, and that's just because my insurance only covers those if you're on mealtime insulin. Would I use one if I had it? Probably, because I like having that control. However, my physical therapist, who also was a diabetes educator at one point, pointed out that the difference between having a Libra and checking your blood sugar regularly isn't that different. If you are checking your blood sugar multiple times a day, you should be having some level of control. You should understand when you have your highs and when you have your lows. I know that for me, I mostly am lower in the morning and higher in the evening. I know that when I'm on prednisone, I will be high throughout the entire night, which is why I take it at night, so that I can't get super thirsty and dehydrate myself and make everything much worse. But like I said, I think that if you work really hard at it, like I've worked quite hard, and my A1C went from 10 when I was diagnosed down to 6, which is what it was before I was diagnosed, before I had this scary episode. And that's just through hard work. It's just through treating diabetes like a chronic illness. Treating, you know, I hate using the term food as medicine because there's all sorts of issues with that word, especially as someone who has problems with an eating disorder. I think that it's super toxic to say food is medicine, but in the case of people with type 2 diabetes, it really is. It really is part of your regime. Making sure that I drink several Ensure Pluses a day, making sure that I eat several meals a day, like all of that is a part of my treatment, along with checking my blood sugar, taking my insulin, taking my metformin, and remembering that diabetes is a chronic illness. We need to treat it like a chronic illness. I think is really the key to why I was able to lower my A1C, because I mean, I basically lowered my A1C, you know, I don't want to say immediately because that's a buzzword, but very quickly. I've had, let's see, yeah, so I've had a total of 4 A1C tests, and I had my first A1C test, which was when I was like high and in my episode, and it's horrible. But then all 3 of my subsequent A1C tests have come back either within normal or within pre-diabetic range, and that's really, really good. And it's just something that you work on. And, you know, people, I think that it's so easy to not take care of diabetes like a chronic illness, and I've learned that just treat it like a chronic illness. Treat it like what you would treat it if it was any other chronic illness not named diabetes. Treat it as if it had some really rare name and it was a disease that could really mess you up. Because that's what it is. Diabetes is something that can really mess you up. You can give yourself neuropathy in your feet, in your eyes. You can cause yourself to have gastroparesis. There are so many things, and while I definitely don't want to say that it's completely unavoidable, on the other hand, lowering your blood sugar is something that, you know, you can work really hard at, and you can try to delay or prevent some of these complications. Well, guys, that was a very long diagnosis discussion video. Apparently I have very strong thoughts about diabetes. Yeah, I hope you guys like this video. I'm going to be filming another packing video as soon as my clothes get out of the dryer, because I'm actually going on a job interview. Let's see, when you watch this video, I will have just gotten back from the job interview, and the reason I'm doing another packing video is I showed what I was packing for a 1 overnight trip, but I'm going to be overnight for 2 trips, and I'm going to be 6 hours away from where I normally live, in a place with new hospital systems and new procedures. So I want to show you guys what I'm planning on doing, what I'm planning on taking, and hopefully maybe shed some light and talk about things that I did use last time or that I didn't use last time. So, alright guys, take care. Bye-bye.